Hope everybody's having a fantastic start to your week. It's about halfway through March. Some of y'all might be on spring break. If you are, I'm jealous. Hope everybody's doing well. So for the chat tonight, talking a little bit about dynos. One of the weird things that happens to come up rather regularly is the question of how much horsepower will it make? What kind of power is this thing going to make? What can I expect? What's the difference between a Mustang dyno and a dyno jet and a 248 and a this and a that and all this other stuff? And hey, what's up, Mark? So what I wanted to do is basically walk you guys through some of the differences in the dynos, but also some pitfalls that you can and probably will fall into if you're getting so deep into this that you're actually taking your car to the dyno, which is kind of where I want to start with this. Look, as car guys, everybody wants to find out, or everybody wants to know what their car is making to the rear wheels. And everybody that's got a YouTube channel, that's got any kind of followers whatsoever, if they want to get anything going with the car that they have, they drag it to their nearest dyno shop and have that thing strapped down to the rollers. And then everybody stands around with all this giddy anticipation as far as what this contraption is actually going to put down to the rear wheels or front wheels or all four wheels. And that's the thing that people use to market either a tune or a supercharger kit or what have you. These are the things, these numbers and these dynos that are used to show those results. So they're important, at least in those terms. They serve a marketing purpose. They primarily should be serving a tuning purpose. But so often is the case that what the dyno sheet says, we're going to be talking about a dyno sheet too, what that dyno sheet says can be very much manipulated and by choice or by accident. And there are a lot of inconsistencies that can take place for a few different reasons. So mainly we're going to be talking about not so much the differences necessarily between a Mustang dyno and a dyno jet. We're really going to be talking about some of the issues that you can run into and why two cars with identical setups can make different power numbers and different horsepower graph numbers. Hopefully this is coming up. And so this is what I want to walk you guys through. Basically, why there are differences and what you need to understand about how a dyno works and how a dyno operator basically prepares the dyno for your car to start its test. So anyway, let me check in with you guys real quick. Let's see. Mark's checking in. Yo, Captain Scat's got the bald guy with the shades and the arm flex. I like it. Shawnee's saying, good evening, B. Good evening, Sean. Mark's saying, damn, Mason, you are reading my mind. Your live stream topics always correspond with my recent thoughts about what to do next with my 5.7. Glad to hear it, man. Captain's checking in, saying, what's happening, Sean? Sean's saying his 2020 GT just made 4 1/4 on a dyno jet on a 93 octane tune, E85 tune coming soon. Ultimately, I want to make 5 bills at the wheels with long tubes and an intake. Bruce checking in and say, hey B, what's good? I just was watching one of your older 392 videos. Those were the days, man. I miss that car. Solbrite saying, sup B, going to keep you on the phone while watching Demonology on the PC. I like it. Tell him I said hello. Let's see. Bruce saying, I'm curious as to what would be the torquiest setup would be for the 5.7 as well as one for the 392. Positive displacement supercharger solves that problem real quick. Camp Scout, I'm watching B on 72 inches of high def. The whole house is watching tonight. I love it. So let's dive into this, guys. First, dynos, the types. You've got inertia and you've got eddy current. There's really no third. Inertia, all an inertia dyno is think of running on a treadmill, except you are making the treadmill roll underneath you, so to speak. The old 248 dyno jet, which is kind of the go-to for an inertial style dyno, basically is taking a 660 pound drum and it is measuring the rate at which the car, truck, or whatever is accelerating that drum. And from that, it derives horsepower and torque. Acceleration based on rate of acceleration over a specific period of time. An inertia dyno is awesome in that they are typically consistent provided all the parameters are correct and set properly with the dyno, and it's been recently or at least regularly calibrated. That calibrated, by the way, is going to come up a few times, and it is the part that really drives everybody nuts and can solve basically the age-old question as to why does my car make more or less power than another car that's identical. A lot of times it's in the calibration and how that dyno is set up. Now, an eddy current dyno, completely different thing. An eddy current dyno basically is an electric motor in reverse. The car, truck, or what have you is spinning a drum that is electronically loaded. So think of it kind of like a generator, really. And the faster and the harder you spin that drum, the more current it makes. And from that, it can basically tell what kind of horsepower and torque. It's actually extremely accurate. And it's going to give a slightly different read as far as how the horsepower and torque is spit out. Normally, significantly lower. And when I say significant, we're talking numbers like 7 to 10% less power to the rear wheels normally with a loaded eddy current dyno. So there's your numbers explained. Take your car to inertia dyno and you dyno it, it'll probably put a lower number down on a Mustang or Dyno Comp or any of these other eddy current or loaded dynos. The main difference here is that an eddy current dyno is great for tuning because you can set that thing to where it will not allow the engine to exceed a certain RPM. No matter how much load you put on it, you cannot exceed a certain RPM, and that helps you to dial in really well partial throttle and wide open throttle low speed tuning. So that helps a ton there. But it, again, can, in some cases will, break hearts in terms of what kind of power number the thing actually makes. So where can things go wrong? I mean, now that we know the differences with dynos, the differences in dynos can sometimes almost be irrelevant, though, because unless they are calibrated and unless the weather station information is calibrated properly, you can run into some serious issues. And this is the one that typically comes up. You take your car to a dyno shop. They get it all strapped down, and a combination that you are extremely familiar with is known to put down 400 horsepower to the rear wheels on that dyno. And then for some reason, either the weather station issue comes up or there's some other calibration that hasn't been followed, what have you. The car lays down a really low number. Like say instead of 400, it puts down 350. I mean, you almost have a mild heart attack and you think that your car is blown up or there's something wrong with it. There's not. I have seen this over and over and over again. And what ends up happening is typically the barometric pressure on the sensor on the dyno is reading excessively high. And so the correction factor is ridiculous. So for the SAE numbers, that can show up as being an issue. Other problems, well, quite honestly, come in calibration. These things really need to be calibrated about once a month if they're heavily used. And if they're not ever calibrated, they will slide out of calibration. Some will end up reading a little bit high. Most end up reading a little bit low. As far as the inertia style dynos, the eddy current dyno, there's no telling what that thing's going to read. So those are the ways that a dyno can, when they fall out of calibration, can really cause a fit, because you're expecting just a number on a healthy combination. And when it comes back and it's not that number, a lot of red flags go up and tuners start getting either phone calls saying, hey, this thing isn't making the power that you promised or whatever. And most tuners know about what their cars are going to make. And realistically, I mean, when you start to look at your data logs, and this is the first thing, make sure that you're data logging these things when they're on the dyno. Saying that the car is doing great or that the car isn't doing well won't do you any good unless it's being data logged as well as cataloged on that dyno. But one of the main things is if the data looks good, fueling looks good, and timing looks good, and air charge is showing what it should show, the car is making the power that it should. And it's not going to fall too much outside of maybe a 1 or even at the most 2% variance, but even 2% is a lot. Typically, they're within about 1% high or low, and that's just where they'll find their common ground. But the interesting thing is that some dyno operators seem to think that they are without fault. And when their dyno reads excessively low and they just say, well, that's just what your car makes, or it reads excessively high, that's just as bad. And so a properly calibrated dyno is incredibly important. And it's okay to ask, when's the last time you had this thing dynoed? And ask to see a printout, pull up a car recently, not something from 3 years ago. Pull up a car that they dynoed recently that is like a known factor, like a Mustang GT, a 392 car, 5.7, whatever, it doesn't matter. But let's take a look at what this thing is reading so that you can at least get an idea before you put your car on the dyno for its baseline run or for its after parts have been installed or whatever validation run. Which kind of brings us into the next bit of topic. You always have to have a baseline run on your car before you have any modifications done to it. That does a few things. One, it'll at least give you a generic health update on the car that you're working on. And secondly, it gives you a baseline from which you can then judge whatever the mods got you for the car. But you got to be real careful with these baseline numbers. First of all, you don't want to take the lowest baseline number and try to compare that to the highest gain that you get out of the parts. You basically want to take a bit of an average, do at least 2 or 3 pulls on a baseline and at least 3 or 4 pulls with it modified. You might have to make some tweaks or something like that, but once you really start getting the thing dialed in, then you'll have a pretty good idea as far as what it's going to make with the cam or the headers or the blower or whatever. But the main thing is to take the average number. And also, you want to make sure that the car is being run in the same gear, because believe it or not, the gear can actually make a difference between what the car will show on some types of dynos and what it will show on others. Mark, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Say no particular reason for the super chat, just showing support since you're consistent and always give good information. Man, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm glad it popped up. So I had to like devolve my YouTube app, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, because it wouldn't show when super chats came through. It was really weird. So anyway, thank you so very much, man. I appreciate that very much. So when we're looking at the dyno figures, it's extremely important to make sure that you're looking at consistency more than anything else. And this is where I will get into, again, a calibration question. In many cases, Hellcats are known for this. 392s and 5.7s, not so much. But getting the lead, the RPM lead, which is the thing that you would recognize as just the clampy thing that they'll put around a spark plug wire. What can end up happening is that lead gets damaged over time. It's just, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And because that thing is close to headers, it could be close to turbos, superchargers, whatever. that I've seen. I've gone through lead after lead after lead. I've tried to repair leads with little to no success. But at any rate, if you can't get the lead to give you a solid reading because the vehicle is coil on plug and you're having a hard time reading sensor lines or what have you, then the dyno operator will run the test off of a wheel speed sensed RPM calibration. It's basically the same way that you would calculate, or I'm sorry, that you would set up the dyno for a diesel or for an EV. Basically, you just bring the vehicle up to an RPM, and then you calibrate the dyno and say, okay, this wheel speed equates to this RPM when the car is in this gear. And then from there, it will be able to calibrate low, high, everything in between based on that one point. Well, the problem is that it's only 1 point, and the machine has to be run for a certain amount of time at a very consistent RPM, and that's kind of hard to do. And so there will be variation from different days on the same dyno because that calibration is different. And let me give you a really good example of what that looks like. So this is a car, and I'm not saying who or what place or anything else like that, but take a look at this. The car was run actually out to 6,500 RPM. The dotted line on this will show that it gets pretty close to 6,500 RPM in terms of being accurate. The solid line, if you notice, only runs out to 6,150, but in reality, they're both run out to, 64, 6,500 RPM. The reason why the chart looks differently and why they're ending at different places and why they read differently is specifically because of the calibration and how that dyno is calibrated for that particular car. So there's a difference here of 7 foot-pounds of torque and about 8 horsepower. So 7 foot-pounds of torque and 8 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot. But when you look at it on a chart, and then you look at the way that the vehicle was making power and just the way the shapes of the curves, you go, man, that other car really took off. On the big end, looks like it lost a little bit of power down low, when the reality is that that chart would actually be tilted basically like this, make a little bit more torque, maybe a little bit less horsepower, or that dotted line would have been kicked up the same way. So you just have to kind of understand the differences here, and you have to be able to recognize when there is a variance, because if you don't see the variance, you don't pick up on it, that can end up skewing how you view the results of those those trips of the dyno. Sean, thank you very much, saying future live chat talking about EPA going after modded cars. I had a bad feeling this would happen with a new administration. It's funny. I've been having a lot of conversations with folks about this kind of stuff. One of the big issues that has come up, we're talking about dynos, so this kind of falls in line. But one of the biggest issues is it's not so much that they're coming after modded cars, but they are coming after the shops and the companies that make the software for some of these modded cars. So kind of one of those weird things where we just have to watch out for where this is going to go. It's not really an administration thing. This is something that has been going on for years and years and years and years. As a matter of fact, there was a point in time, man, I want to say, and I only know this because I remember my dad talking about this, and it was, God, man, I want to say it was maybe in the mid 80s. I was just a little bitty guy back then, but I was still into it. I remember my dad saying something to the effect of, if at that point in time, if you wanted to do an engine swap, the engine, as it came out of whatever it was coming out of, had to be emissions compliant for the year that the engine was made in whatever car it was in. So, extreme example, let's say you're taking a TPI 305 or 350 out of, like, let's say you're taking a, whatever, vet motor of 1983 Corvette engine, 1985, whatever, first fuel injection stuff, and you put it into a 32 Ford Roadster. Well, the issue at that point is they were saying, well, no, that car would have to have catalytic converters. That converted car would have to have catalytic converters and meet the emissions requirements of the year of the car that the engine was swapped into. And I remember thinking, damn, that's kind of weird. But I was thinking too, well, maybe because I didn't, later on when I wasn't thinking this when I was, just a little bitty guy, but I was thinking later on about that topic. And I thought, well, man, if that's the case, that's really weird. I mean, just to see a 32 Roadster with catalytic converters hanging out the side of it, I don't know. It's just something to think about. But anyway, this has been something that's come up an awful lot. It's just now that they're talking about a reinterpretation of the law, which is funny because I didn't know you could reinterpret laws like this, but I guess you can, or at least reinterpret the wording. And so the question really is going to be, and it may not even come to be, well, if you got cats on your car, well, it still has cats, it's emissions compliant. Yeah, but are they factory catalytic converters? And there could be some very strict rules and laws come out. And I think what I'm hoping and what I'm to understand how this would possibly work out is that, let's say these rules and laws go into effect, or however this thing comes down after all the, lawsuits or whatever, it ends up being okay. Anything made after 2021, you can't modify. Something along those lines, or these rules apply to any vehicle made after 2021 or 2022, whatever it is. They're not going to come after individuals, and I don't see that being the case, but they are going to use individuals to get to tuners and to get to the shops that, perform these types of modifications. So just something to be on the lookout for, something to be aware of. The way that I see that is it's still going to be state run. I mean, look at cannabis laws. You've had cannabis being legalized in many states for recreational use, but it's still a federally illegal substance. It's still going to fall into the state's hands. Okay, so there's at least that to consider. But overall, over the years, there's always been some kind of a petition to sign, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, for the enthusiast and for entry-level racing and the like. And I think that once folks get an understanding for what the final rules will be, it's kind of hard right now because it's all speculation. The EPA is going to have a really strong stance and then they'll pull back a little bit. And that's typically how these things go. So anyway, we'll see how it all turns out. But yeah, that's what's going on with that. Good stuff. Let's see. Sovereign Knight saying, by the way, hit that like button for sure. Anyway, so that's the start for the chat. Let me check in with you guys real quick. But hopefully that gives you an idea. The main thing I wanted to do is I wanted to bring you guys into the fold. When you're looking at literally two cars, exact combination, by the way, why would the power curve look differently? Why would one sign off at one point and not carry out power, but still make more power across the board? What would be the reasons for that? And again, that's a calibration issue. It's not that the dyno is reading wrong. It's reading exactly right based on how it was calibrated. And what really screws guys up is that if the calibration is changed, which it will be if it's being run on wheel sensed mode, if the calibration is changed, or other cars go on there and you have to recalibrate the dyno, there's going to be slight variances there. So again, it's something that you have to understand coming into this. And this is another reason why I absolutely hate dynos. I hate even talking about them, because invariably somebody will throw out, well, my car made whatever on the dyno. I'm not picking on Sean here, but Sean's going to say his car made 4 1/4 on the dyno, which is about what it should make. And again, if that dyno is being regularly serviced and the software looks good and all the sensors are working great and it's calibrated properly, then that is a consistent way to measure the power over and over again. But I've got proof that the calibration is key, and it's easy to have the numbers steer you wrong. It's not that the numbers are being manipulated, because manipulation insinuates malicious intent. That's not the case. It's just that that's the way that this stuff works, and it's just human error and the fact that, you know, nobody can nail a calibration when you're doing wheel speed perfectly. So and I got to where I was real good at it. And it's one of those things where if you don't take your time and just absolutely nail it, and I mean nail it every time, it's going to screw up the numbers. In fact, so much so that I would make sure that my numbers, that my charts would end at the same time, even when they're run on wheel sense mode. And if they didn't, I would actually recalibrate. So at least make an attempt to get it closer. Let's see. Shawnee's asking, are the corrections on the dyno for density altitude fair? They are fair provided that the weather station is working properly. And again, I'll go back to the barometric pressure sensor is the big one. That's where a lot of your correction is made. So the dyno's weather, the barometer will read anywhere from, I think it's like 27 inches of mercury all the way up to like 32 or 33 inches of mercury. That's just actual atmospheric pressure. The higher the atmospheric pressure, the more power that the car is going to make. And the more that the correction will pull back the number to correct the number to a standard, which is like 29.92 inches. The inverse is true too. If the number is very low, then the dyno correction factor will throw numbers at it to bring that number up to that 29.92 inches of mercury correction factor. Well, the problem comes if the barometer isn't quite reading right. And that's a big issue, because if your barometer is not reading right, let's say the barometer is reading 33 inches of mercury, then your car that put down 400 horsepower normally, with a correction factor of say 2%, puts down 392 horsepower. Well, now all of a sudden the correction factor is like 8%, and it's yanking all kinds of power out of the thing because your barometric pressure is just so high. So that's typically what will sting you. The temperature will too. Most of the time you don't have a hydrometer, you're not measuring humidity, but humidity will play more of a role just in terms of what kind of power the car can make. But some of them work with them, some of them don't. And humidity does play a pretty decent role as far as how much power the car will make. But anyway, hopefully that answers the question. Sean's asking, how does an engine dyno work on a stand? The way that an engine dyno works a little bit different. The engine dyno is, well, there's two different kinds, actually. There is the eddy current, which is just like a Mustang dyno, except on the back of the engine, you're bolting, like having a single roller, but it's bolting onto the thing and it just spins the roller this way as opposed to, like wheels. It bolts to basically it's like a transmission, and it measures horsepower the exact same way that the eddy current dynos do at the wheels. It's just measuring it at the crank. The more common dyno that you'll see is called a water brake. And what that is in essence it's like a torque converter slash propeller almost. You could think of it that way, but it's a torque converter, but instead of transmission fluid, it's water. And the way that that thing works is when you bolt the engine to this torque converter, it's got vanes that are spinning in water, and it's a brake in essence. And you can adjust the vanes on this thing to where it will hold specific RPM at whatever RPM you want to get started at. And so you roll into the throttle on the dyno, and the blades will pitch over and only allow the engine to rev to a certain RPM. You hold the RPM, hit the button, and then from there, the computer will allow the engine to accelerate at a specific rate. I think normally most guys have them spool up at like 400 RPM per second. Some will bring it down to 300. Actually, no, I think 300 is more than norm, and some guys will spool them up at 400 RPM per second. Anyway, it's still doing the same thing, but the computer knows how much resistance it's braking the engine in essence, and not braking like snap, but just holding the engine back. And from there, horsepower and torque are derived. They're both extremely accurate. So in fact, all the calibrations for an eddy current dyno would have been initially derived from a water brake dyno, which is what those are called. So that's how those dynos read power. Doc Differentials in say, B Mason, my man, how's it going? I need to talk to you about the subject tonight. As you know what I'm talking about. Got some good news in the form of a ZL1 win. Very nice. Very nice, as a matter of fact. Yeah, give me a holler. Summer Night saying, everyone, did you sign the petition to help pass the RPM Act, save the race cars? Sign it. Dr. Divs checking in with Sovereign Knight. Jay saying, what are your thoughts on Texas Speed new BFD cam for 2012 Charger RT? Thinking of getting one? Give Dr. Differential a shout for all your camshaft needs. Man, I haven't seen the BFD cam or the line of it. I would just say that be careful in putting too large of a cam into your vehicle. It can cause drivability issues and make a car that was snappy and peppy before a little bit of a pig down low. And that for a lot of people, guys, is enough to make them regret putting these big cams into cars. And all I can tell you is, I'm reminded of my own experience with the Z06. I was running a pretty healthy cam in that car, and that cam basically, I'm not going to say ruined the car. I mean, the car pulled like a freaking monster on the big end, but it was pretty soft down low, had some drivability issues, and I just ended up not liking it that much. Sam's checking in and saying, yo, Master Mason, what's up, Sam? Cap saying he signed it yesterday. Good deal. Let's see. Everybody's checking in with Dr. Diff. So say, well, I guess I'm on my 4th trains in 3 years. I guess I partied too hard. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. Oh, Doc Diff's talking about gearing, saying my experience, a 373 will make more than, let's say, a 410 or a 456. Yeah, that can actually be the case, especially with inertia style dynos. Not so much with eddy current, but yeah, for sure on inertia, that can make a difference. Chris Harris is asking, could you explain how a fuel cell works with nitrous? Sure. So a standalone is what I'm assuming that you're meaning, a standalone fuel cell or a separate fuel pump in a single fuel cell. The way that will work is when you arm the nitrous, that pump will prime, or it'll just kick on altogether, and it'll be a closed loop system specifically for the nitrous kit. So in essence, what you're doing is you are supplying fuel separately from the fuel pump that is feeding the engine itself. And there's a lot of reasons why guys do this. Namely, number one, it's allowing you to run whatever kind of fuel you want to run in your nitrous kit. So let's say you're running a 93 octane pump gas tune. And you want to hit the thing with a $1.50 shot of nitrous on a wet kit, which is perfectly fine. But in your standalone fuel cell, instead of running 93, you want to tag that, 1 gallon or 2 gallon fuel cell with, say, Sunoco 260 GT Plus or, MS 109. You want to put race gas in that thing. Still unleaded, but you want to run a race fuel in that tank. It helps to increase decrease, I should say, knock sensitivity, and also gives you a standalone fuel system so that you're not taxing the fuel system that is running your car. So there's that, and that's the main reason why guys use it. The other reasons for that are it's a lot easier to basically validate that you've got proper fuel pressure through that system. There's not going to be a pressure drop at the rail if you're using the Schrader valve to try to feed your fuel solenoid. You can get a temporary drop in fuel pressure and a steady decrease in fuel pressure as that nitrous fuel solenoid is opened and is increasingly open if it's a progressive kit. Again, this is a situation where you can run a single 255 or 450 in-tank pump that'll support gobs of horsepower on its own, and it's only having to feed the nitrous system. So I'm a big fan of them, and I like them because they're easily validated. Again, they're not relying on the pumps that are feeding the engine. You can run a separate fuel in those things. Again, you can you're going to want to run a return style system with those types of kits. And then from there, you will run a separate hob switch. You run a separate hob switch, pressure switch basically for the nitrous kit itself, which will shut down your nitrous pump, but it won't shut down. In other words, it kills fuel if the bottle pressure gets too low. It just kills the system altogether, and it's not affecting anything with your car's normal setup. Lots of reasons, man. It's a bunch of really just kind of fly on the wall splatter reasons why you would want to do that. There is no safety issue to worry about or anything like that. It's just another fuel cell. So, aside from running the lines, that's all there is to it. It's no different than running a meth kit line from the trunk to the front. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Sam's asking, is it true, getting back to the dyno stuff, is it true it's best to run in as close to direct drive gear as possible on a dyno? No, it's not. For several reasons. One, let's take a Hellcat, for example. Hellcat with a 262 gear running 6th gear at full song is going to be spinning the rollers to the tune of 170 or 180 miles an hour. That dyno run is going to take forever. And realistically, the car won't ever be run in those conditions anyway. So the idea, there's a few things. One, run it in the gear that you're actually going to be running wide open in. And for most guys, that's going to be 5th. But 2, you're on a dyno, which means that you've got an odd load on the rear tires, and you've got heat to consider, the surface of the rollers to consider, and the time at wide open throttle to consider. And if you're on a loaded dyno, then you're going to be getting hit with a lot of load for a long time. And that's not necessarily good for the car or for the tires themselves. So I always recommend no more mile an hour than about 135, 145 if possible. I get it, because of gearing, sometimes you're going to go over that. You might tickle 160, but if you're in a car and you're looking at about 160 miles an hour dyno speed, I would typically say take the gear before that and make your hits in that gear. And unless you're making the hit in a later gear because the car is making so much power that it's hazing the tires on the dyno, you'll be better off making the hit in that lower gear normally. And again, give yourself a mile an hour cap of, again, I just don't like going over. Really, I don't like going over 150. Frankly, I prefer anything over 140, 145. Take the gear below it again, unless traction is an issue. Hang on a second. CFL, man, thank you very much. CFL is asking, I missed last chat and was wondering how you made out with those prototype Hoosier STSs. Got a new set of bead locks waiting for them. So the latest set did extremely well. If you would like to see the ETs that the car is running, I think you may still be able to see them at HRP Slips. Just remember that my car is car 1122. That's my car number. So anytime you want to see what my car is running, if I'm at the drag strip on a Friday night, just pull up HRP Slips and you'll figure it out. Just type in my car number, swipe back over to the right, and that'll bring up all my time slips. They did amazing. The exact same 60 foot over and over and over and over and over again. So absolutely dead on. Awesome pattern. So we're doing pattern testing. So, yep, absolutely. Hang on just a sec. But thank you very much for the question, and I appreciate that a ton. Hang on. Get back over here. All right, here we go. Cap's got saying, Dr. Diff, I'm playing your card tonight. I've got B on the TV and watching him on the phone. I like it. Thanks again, Sean. I appreciate the super chat, by the way. Ship Nick saying, what up, B? Got the arm flex and the ball guy. I like it. Dr. Diff saying, actually, my dyno sets up like that on wheel speed when spark can't be picked up for whatever reason. My particular dyno gets 3 readings, 2K, 35, and 5K. So that's really the best way to do it if you can. Some dynos are a little bit different. And, you know, the thing is some vehicles just can't spin to 5,000 RPM. So that can cause a bit of an issue. But if you can pick up at least 1 data point, you'll be okay. 2 data points obviously would be a lot better. Sam saying, Sean, I guess we're going to start building drag tractors now. Maybe. Sour Knight saying, sign the petition. Absolutely. Nathan's checking in and said, hey, B, been a while. Hope all is well. Man, all is well. Hope everything's well with you too. Let's see. Oh, Sour Knight saying he sent the URL. Probably got flagged. If you send any kind of, normally, if you send during the super chat anything with a website, it'll flag it. It won't even let you post it. 728 saying, thank you for kindly expressing it's not an administration specific issue. Yeah, it's not. I mean, this literally goes back years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And again, I mean, I was just a little guy and they were already talking about this kind of stuff. And it was funny too, because at that time, here's the thing. At that time, the V8 was on its way out. I mean, if you were to talk to anybody, it was basically, look, if you want to build a hot rod in the future, you got to find something built in the 60s or early to mid 70s, because the V8 is on its way out. These new 6 cylinders are coming in, the turbo 4 cylinders coming in, and this new fuel injection stuff is going to hit, and it's all about economy, and don't worry about performance. If you want performance, you can still have it, but you got to build it and go from there. But yeah, it was a very real thing. There were a lot of hot rod guys talking about there wasn't going to be a V8, and the manufacturers were giving them that reason to have that conversation. You have to remember that you guys do know that, well, everybody loves the new Mustang, right? You got the new Mustang, Terminator Cobra, GT500, SM95, S550, the new S660. Y'all realize that 1993 was supposed to be the last year of a front engine rear drive Mustang? Anybody remember that? I don't think you do. So the problem here is that the Probe GT was going to be taking over as the performance car for Ford. Front engine rear drive was out, and this was going to be the new way forward. This was part of an agreement and a kind of a late night hookup between Ford and Mazda with the Mazda 6. And the Probe GT was going to be that car. In a neat little car, too, 4-cam V6. I actually had one. Neat, fun car to drive. But the reality is that it didn't go away, the Mustang, at least front engine rear drive. And enthusiasts were coming unglued about that. And so Ford, I don't know, sometime around 1987, decided that they were going to keep making the car. They revised the Fox platform into the SN95, and the rest is history. So don't forget that this almost went away 30-something years ago, and it's just now, you know, folks just now are seeing, oh my God, this EPA thing, it's coming back around. Oh my God, we're going to lose everything. Guys, if you've been into cars for any real length of time, this is something that you've lived with your entire existence. And by the way, again, states are going to be the ones that fully regulate and enforce whatever, comes down the pike. And this is in a lot of ways nothing illegal. It's been illegal to remove catalytic converters since they had catalytic converters, and it's been illegal to modify, remove, or otherwise emissions equipment like smog pumps, EGRs, etc., since there were smog pumps and EGRs or etc. So there's that. It's never been illegal to tune a car, like to give it a tune-up. But anyway, that stuff's been illegal this whole time. And of course, look at where we're at. So has anything really changed? I don't know. I mean, the technology has changed, but I don't think the spirit of the rule has changed. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, kind of gives you my own kind of perspective on it. I'm not dismissing it by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am saying is that this has been a thing that's been going on for the better part of half a freaking century, not a decade, and not for 10 years or 20 years, the better part of half of a century, this has been a thing. So here you go. Round whatever. Oh, Sam's saying a lot of diesel shops won't touch anything newer than 07. Yeah, it's already happened. Well, this has been happening in the diesel world for a long time. Cody said, if EPA makes it to where we can mod cars, they just lost, or can't mod cars, they just lost a good portion of my money going to the economy. Government killing jobs again. Well, it could very well kill some jobs. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Red Wine's asking, what is my opinion on the pedal box? Well, you guys chime in with me. I love pedal box. The pedal box, pedal commander. I love all of them because it's a passive device that allows you to tailor the throttle response of your vehicle to your mood. So if you're feeling a little bit aggressive, you want to get on it, you want to feel that real sharp throttle response, you can dial it up. If you want to chill, you're going on a road trip, you want to kind of have a little bit more relaxed driving experience, you can tone that thing down. You can have your suspension settings and your steering settings if you so have them, set however you like. But I love them. I think they're great. I've installed them. I've owned them. And I will go on record as saying that one of my favorite combinations is a bone stock Hellcat, no tune, 309 gear, pedal box, pedal commander. Pick whichever throttle intercept you want. And a little bit of weight reduction and just let her eat. And that is, that's actually a real clean setup. So, but I had them on, had pedal commander on my E63, and I've installed them for a couple of buddies for their cars, usually foreign stuff at that time. So I like them. Past checking in saying late to the party. It's all right. Better late than never. Haha saying, hey, Master Mason, I was wondering if I should do a disc brake conversion to my rear wheels. I've heard a lot of people say drum brakes are sketch, but so far they work fine for me. They'll work fine for you. I've gotten 9s in a Mustang with drum brakes. Okay. I'm not saying that I would say to do that, but I've done it. Look, yeah, they're better. But I mean, unless you're road racing the thing, you're tearing up back roads like crazy, you're really not going to notice a difference. The big difference is that drum brakes just will fade more quickly than the disc brakes. But, you know, I don't, yeah, there's a performance gain there. Yeah, the modern stuff is a little bit lighter than the drums, but unless you're doing a ton of autocross or a ton of some level of competitive driving, it really won't do any good to make the swap. So there's that. Sam said, if anybody's willing to teach me HP tuners, I'm willing to learn. There are people that put on classes for that, and they ain't cheap because there is a lot to learn. And yeah, there's a lot to learn. I mean, there's guys that literally go to school for years to get a good handle on tuning. Cody's saying what EPA thinks cars are what's causing the biggest pollution when it's not even close. Well, there's a lot of things that cause pollution. Cars are one of them. And, it's one of those things where it's a difficult look. EPA is doing their job. And the reality is, again, the rules are in place and catalytic converters are on your cars. And by the way, I was talking about, let me kind of stop right there, a bit of a sidebar. Do you realize that how many emissions control systems your car does not have anymore? Your car probably doesn't have an EGR valve. That's the exhaust recirculation valve. Your car probably doesn't have an air pump, also known as a smog pump, a thing that would inject air into the exhaust system to basically help light off catalytic converters. Basically, you're adding oxygen into the exhaust system to help burn off any unburned fuel going through the system and through the cats. The only thing that really is still on the car are the catalytic converters when you look at it from that point of view. And the funny thing is that modern catalytic converters offer no detriment to power whatsoever. I've proven it time and time and time again. I mean, we're running mid 9s with stock catalytic converters with some of these Hellcats. So, I mean, if mid 9s doesn't tell you that they don't inhibit flow, I don't know what does. So there's that. I get it. It's a positive display. It's a supercharged application. Things are different with that. I get that. But the point of what I'm telling you is that you don't have the level of emissions equipment on your vehicle anymore like what you used to have. So the only thing that you're killing on a gas engine that would really affect emissions realistically would be, number one, a catalytic converter delete. And number two, if you've got so much timing in the thing at partial cruise, if basically you've overtimed it and you're dumping NOx because of it, again, that would be at cruise, then that would be maybe a place where you would see an issue. But everywhere else, there's really no, in fact, on my tunes, I don't do anything that would affect emissions. So I'm like, not my issue. Because I've found that it, by deleting or messing with some of these things that are an issue for emissions, has actually cost me power. Now, of course, you get past a certain level and you might want to rethink catalytic converters or whatnot, but the main thing is if they're sized properly, they don't offer any detriment to power. Let's see. Donald saying cancel culture on gas fumes. Let's see. Hey Sam, I'm gonna throw you a yellow flag here, man. This is not a political show at all. And although I understand what you're trying to say about the deal with Flint, I got to tell you, man, part of that is true, but I'll also tell you that there's a certain community that has brought this on themselves. There's a certain community that had they not flaunted what they were doing in the face of the EPA and basically rubbed their thumb in the EPA's face with what they were up to as far as different deletions and different emissions equipment that they were outright deleting, that the gas community may not be in the situation that they're in right now. Basically, they called a lot of attention to themselves that have put us more or less in the crosshairs of the EPA on the gas side. So just know that some of what you say is true, maybe with the EPA overstepping their bounds. But what I'm going to caution you on is, you don't slap a bull in the face and expect him not to do anything. That bull being the EPA has got a lot of horns to deal with. X guy saying, my shocks are starting to go out. I'm thinking about getting the RideTech coilover kit. Are these good? The RideTechs are actually not bad. I haven't heard anybody complaining about them. That being said, I don't mess with coilovers very often, but for the guys that have it, they do work really well. I will caution you though, make sure if you're going to be running that kit that you get some adjustable camber arms for your rear suspension so that you can align it to where the car's, you don't have all this, a ton of camber on the thing. Because what will end up happening is you lower it on the coilovers, but you end up having too much camber and it just destroys the tires. Car handles bad, doesn't accelerate really well because you now have a much smaller footprint on the ground. So if you remember to do it, or just set it to the normal ride height, you'll be fine. But if you want to lower it, always have to get it realigned. HU37 is asking, what type of dynos are hub dynos? Hub dynos are eddy current dynos. If you're not familiar with what a hub dyno is, it's kind of a unique looking thing. It's actually kind of scary looking, but what you do is you basically bolt the dyno to the car. You take the wheels off and bolt the dyno to the hub, and then there's no inertial loss from the wheels and tires, the weight of the wheels and tires themselves. You're only literally measuring the power that is coming from the differential. So pretty cool way to measure power. And again, CFL, thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate it. Summer's saying, hit that like button, hit that like button. Smash it. People's elbow. Pat saying, B Mason, random non-car Mopar question. What type of music do you like? Do you like metal? I listen to all kinds of stuff, man. So I'll listen to Motown when I'm working typically. I'll listen to now big fan of Rob Zombie, so multiple non-associative words, new albums, actually really good. I'll listen to pretty much anything. Like I like a lot of trip hop type stuff. Old Gorillas I like. Okay, here's a perfect one. I'm wearing the shirt now. Quaker City Nighthawks, baby. Fort Worth, Texas rock and roll. So, yeah, there you go. Quaker City Nighthawks. You can see that. One of my all-time favorite bands. Foxes in the Hen House. One of my favorite songs. So, stuff I like, man. Like all kinds of stuff, man. It's not just one type of music. Jay is asking, what part of the driveline drains power the most? It depends on the setup. It depends on the drivetrain. If it is an old style automatic, well, I'll tell you what, no matter what, it's more than likely going to be, if it's an automatic transmission, the torque converter. Now, if it's a non-lockup, it'll really soak up a lot of power because that power just won't translate to the rear wheels because of the slip. But you also have to remember that the torque converter is heavy. So there's a lot more, or I say there can be more inertial loss with a torque converter than there would be with a clutch. Modern torque converters, though, are a lot lighter than what they used to be. And so with the advent of a lockup converter and the fact that the converters now are a little bit lighter, but are yet still very strong, you don't get as much driveline loss through the converter. So then from there, you would have the rear differential, and that would be your last line of power differentiation, because it's why it's called a differential, because power is going one way and it needs to split it off in that direction. And so that is a partial power loss, again, because of inertial, just you spinning this chunk away. If you ever picked up a diff, they're heavy. But a combination of those two things are the ones, the areas that soak up the most power. Dr. Diff saying, okay, your dyno speed comment, or if you have a customer just absolutely dead set on making the hit on a 1-to-1 ratio. At that point, you've got to be the dyno operator and say, well, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to make the hit or you're not. And that 1-to-1 ratio, as long as their tires don't fly apart, you're fine. Not that it happens very often, but it can happen. And that's why, especially if they show up with an old set of drag radials or something like that, something's been sitting in storage forever, tires are underinflated. That's another thing. By the way, there's like a checklist, and I put together videos about checklists for taking your car to the dyno. And one of those things was make sure that your tires are not drag radials, make sure that they are newer than 3 to 4 years old, and that they are filled up full of air pressure. Dyno operators, make sure that the tires are fairly new looking, and make sure that they've got at least 30 to 32 PSI in them normally. That'll solve a lot of problems, and make sure the pressure is even on both sides. Stephen saying, evening B. Good evening, Stephen. Summer saying, not the Mach-E. I don't know, man. Mach-E got a lot of love. Pat saying, B Mason, you should get a phone number to let us call in talk show style. It would be more interactive. Yeah, the only problem is that doing a talk show like that, I wouldn't be able to see everybody in the chat. So I would have to have a board operator to screen some of the calls too, which would be really good. XCash saying the Probe was a good car, but then you also had the SHO. Very, very cool. Very cool car. A lot of folks forget that car, and it was, for its day, dude. Okay, so on the highway, not from a dig, but on the highway, that SHO, give a GT Mustang all it could handle, man. That was a neat car. Dr. Dew saying, I remember the mod talk. I'm the early 2000s when putting forced induction on an NA vehicle was going to be illegal. Don't remember much about it because of, well, it didn't happen. Yeah, well, that part of it didn't. Tuxedo's in. Said, hey, Mason, what up, Tux? Dr. Diff, thank you very much for that, man. Saying to hit that one on the head. Good call, answer. Don't know what did I say? I hope I said something smart. Every once in a while I do. And yeah, it's funny. So at one point, so I don't remember the supercharger thing. That may have come up at some point, but let's see. Tuck saying, just got back from my dad's house and I made a new character on my tablet and it's a mermaid. Very cool, man. I like it. So we're not saying 36 watchers, but only 19 likes. Hit that like button, peeps. Hit it. Hit them thumbs up. Pat saying drum brakes rock for drag racing, less drag. Yeah, you can actually, the cool thing about drum brakes is you can actually ratchet the things where they don't even touch. So Tuxedo's got the name of the character all figured out. Cerelia? Is that how you say that? Kind of a cool name. Teddy's saying, hey, Mace, thanks for all the knowledge. You got it. Oh, Doc Div saying on the HP Tuners comment, you will learn more on the support after the class than you do in the class. Best way to do it is to do it. I learn something almost every time I open my HP Tuners. B taught me something last time. Saying credit where it's due. Well, I mean, dude, broke clocks right twice a day, brother. So I was just showing you something that you already knew about. So I'm saying, although take Alex Bites' class, it's well worth the money. The tuning school has good classes also, and take any extra info you can, all of it, and use it, see what works best for you, but it's not cheap. So yeah, the thing is that when it comes to tuning, a lot of it really is intuitive. You may already have the knowledge. It's just actually applying your knowledge. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, and a lot of things that I don't really get too into when it comes to tuning, because to really get this stuff right, you've got to do it every day, over and over again. Repetition. You've got to, it's like basically you're learning a new language. And so you need to learn the basics. And so you learn how to tune a specific car. And then from there, you've got some knowledge, and you can kind of basically you can start to spread that out and start picking up on different things with different platforms. And, that's the learning that latitude. You're going to start to learn things a little bit here. Oh yeah, now I remember how that worked. And then you start asking questions like cam tuning, like, oh man, what's the best way to do the cam tuning? And why would I want to lower my VE down low and raise it up top, and especially in the middle with some of these cams? And I don't understand. All that comes in time. And but the funny thing is that you learn a lot about how an engine works from a dynamic point of view when you start getting into tuning. And the more you understand about the dynamics of like why a cam makes more power and why volumetric efficiency is lower down low and higher in a certain area and all these other goofy things, once you get that part of the language learned, and that's just kind of part of what that helps you out a ton, and timing and understanding fuel quality. And then you start getting into other things that, it's something that you build upon. It's like building a lighthouse. I mean, every brick that you stack is vertical. You are building upon that knowledge over and over and over again. And a lot of it is circular too. Cody's saying, so I'm to the point of stock cats, okay, do no damage to power. So I can basically run a cat back or an axle back on my Escape without worrying about using high flow cats. Correct. Most of the high flow cats, you have to remember, let me rephrase this. Most of the catalytic converters that are on modern vehicles would have been considered an aftermarket high flow catalytic converter by the standards of the day. All of the modern catalytic converters are I'm going to say all, because all of them basically are 400 cell count. In other words, it's 400 cell per square inch of two-dimensional surface area. The biscuit, I don't have any biscuits. The biscuit, you can just think about biscuit. That's what they look like. They're usually round, but they're going to be round. They're about an inch to an inch and a half inch thick. Some of them are a little bit thicker, some of them are thinner, but say about an inch and a half inch thick per biscuit of this coated ceramic material. And for example, you might have two of them stacked, like in the Mopar stuff for the V8 cars, the 392 and the Hellcat, have these two stacked biscuits. And in essence, what's going on here is you've got this extremely high flow catalytic converter that is not impeding flow. What some guys will say is, well, it ruins scavenging. And I'm just going, yeah, but if you've got a cam, that would be an argument that I would table, but only because you want scavenging at low RPM when you put a cam in. You're trying to build that throttle response back. You're trying to build that tip in torque back. So that's what long tubes do. They don't really do anything for you up top. In fact, they can hurt you up top. So you just kind of go, it's just such a weird argument for me because I've tested it so many different times in so many different ways that the catalytic converters hurt power thing just kind of gets thrown out the window. Now, I will say that yes, they are an added component. And you've got to be mindful when it comes to these added components because, if they get too hot, they can break or whatnot. But, it's a ceramic part and they're pretty robust in terms of handling temperature. So, making adjustments with over temps can help get some consistency back. But put it to like this, there's a lot of demons running around that have gone 9s with stock catalytic converters with no changes to their catalytic converter over temp enrichment strategy. The only big deal there is making sure you don't exceed your fuel injector duty cycle if you're adding fuel anyway. It's something you have to be mindful about, something that I'm looking at with my tune, or that I was when I put my tune together for my car, just to keep my injector duty cycle under that 100% threshold. And that's what we did. In fact, when I did that air filter testing, I had even shown you guys in 34-degree weather, wide open, carrying some significant mile per hour in high load at those temperatures, which is when you're going to be using the most fuel. I was at 97% with my stock fuel injectors. So just remember, go to tooling around with these things. There's a lot of stuff you've got to take into account. It's not just cat over temp or anything like that. I'm sorry, I'm just getting way off topic here. But to answer the question, no, cats really don't hurt power at all. Doc Div saying turbos kill cats, just for your information. True that. Cody saying, so what you're saying is I can't run my cat? The EGTs get on up there. Well, I mean, I say that. My EGTs get on up there too, but yeah, the flow coming out of that thing, that turbo will wreak havoc on cats in some cases. Just gear up to buy new ones if you're running stock cat. X is saying, okay, I just want the stiffness. My car is already at the perfect ride height. Any lower and I'll scrape my driveway. Yeah, perfect. Then yeah, you should be in good shape. Cody's hanging out with Doc Diff. Let's see. Shib's asking, is there any 27 or 27 and a half inch tall tire? Wondering if I get the benefits from my 392, trying to help that 390s on the 60 foot. So I don't remember what Sean, I think, was running. What were you running, Sean? Were you running a 305 45 17? I want to say that there is a 305 35, but that might be a 20, and that's an NT05. Weird ass size, but that is a 27-inch tall tire. Brendan's saying, my Hellcat made 651 rear wheel horsepower on a Dynojet. What would that equate to on a Mustang dyno? 595 every time, all day, every day. Healthy stock Hellcats almost always make 595 on a Mustang dyno. A calibrated, properly reading Mustang dyno. Some of them make a little bit less. Some of them, like a 2015 might make, instead of 585 or 595, it might make 585. There's a slight, my understanding is that there's a slight difference in the coating that's on the rotors themselves, and that the earlier IHI blowers may have had a thinner coating, which would have reduced or increased the tolerances at the case. So they may not make exactly as much boost, but it's a little bit less. I've noticed that, at least in KPA readings on my car versus newer cars. Some of that has been dispelled, but I don't know. But anyway, 585 to 595 is the number you should be looking at. Oh, Doc Duke saying on the with the EPA rubbing in their face. Yeah, that's a lot of what happened. Steven saying, what is the best way to lower your 60-foot times at the track? And asking, Dave saying, tire and suspension. Very true. And that's really what it is. You can shallow stage the car a little bit. That's when you pre-stage and then barely light up that bottom bulb. That'll give you a little bit more of a run up to the 60 foot, although it'll improve your 60 foot on the time slip. You'll be a little bit slower to the 60 foot. I mean, we're talking hundredths of a second here if you're actually talking about racing somebody. Which, depends on how you have the car set up for the lights and all this other stuff. It gets real convoluted after that. But you've got primarily tire, running the right tire pressure. The main thing here is to make sure that you're not underinflating your tire. A lot of guys with drag radials will try to run 16, 18 PSI. They don't really work that well there. I mean, a minimum of 19 to 20 PSI on a drag radial that is treaded. I would prefer to see somewhere around 22-ish, but 19 to 20 usually works. And for any of these slick type radials, you're not going to want to run any less than about 23 PSI. They're not wrinkle wall like a bias ply. They do still need to have some carcass rigidity because, again, they are a radial tire. The benefit of running a radial is that you have less rolling resistance. But if you air them down, you're going to kind of take that away, that advantage away. So, let's see. But hopefully that answers your question. But that's the main thing: tire and suspension. And suspension settings. Usually, with modern cars, to be honest with you, they're typically pretty good. Your biggest limitation is going to be tire. And again, it also is going to depend on the combination that you're running as well, because, if you're running a manual transmission, there's some techniques to help. There's some different, like you might want to run a bias ply combination with a manual transmission, because with a manual transmission, your tire really is part of an energy absorption part of your suspension. So just the way that you launch the thing, 5,000 RPM, you roll the throttle and hit it, you need part of that force to be absorbed. And a lot of that the tire is going to absorb a lot of it. If it's an automatic, you're looking just for something sticky that's going to grip through your first and second gear shift, or your shift from first to second and second to third. Pat saying, going to Match Race Madness this weekend in Irwindale, California. Nice. No affiliation, just wanted to spread love and support for drag racing and the people that keep it alive, man. Very cool. I like it. Let's see. Doc is saying, oh my God, understanding fuel quality. How can I not stress this more? Seems to be a thing recently where someone comes in for a tune with crap fuel. Yes, it costs more, but damn, you want good stuff, right? So here's one of the things that used to kind of blow my mind is that, guys, this actually would come up not regularly, but it would still get, okay, so somebody would come in and say, okay, I want to tune the car. And they go, okay, I want to tune it on 93. Okay, sounds normal. But then they would ask, can I drive it around on 87 octane? Like, what? So I just don't know where this logic came from. Like, who put it together in their head that, so anyway, the question would be, can I get the car tuned on 93 octane, but can I drive it, like commute it on 87 octane? The answer to that, by the way, is absolutely not, because, well, it's 87 octane and the thing is tuned for 93. It doesn't work like that. Like what? So anyway, yeah, fuel quality is a big deal. And again, the checklist, it goes like this: all fluids topped off and are fresh in the vehicle. Number 2, tires are fit for the performance of the vehicle and they're aired up properly. Make sure that the vehicle is full of fuel, quality fuel, 93 octane, top tier stuff. If you've got 91 and that's the best you can get, then it's 91, top tier that's really what you're looking at. And the fact of the matter is that you'd be surprised. Guys would show up with, an eighth of a tank of fuel. Guys would show up with jacked up tires. One of my all-time annoying things was I'd get guys ask me, how often should I be changing the oil in the catch can? Like, dude, you need to be checking it at least every week, every Sunday, check it. Because we've had guys sucking oil out of their catch can into the intake manifold because at some point it fills up and now you're literally siphoning this stuff. It's a complete mess. Anyway, so yeah, know what you got, and then just don't bring a bucket of problems to the dyno either. I've punted guys, no problem. It's happens more than you think, actually, where we would just refuse to strap the car down. I'd go there, take a look at it, see what I'm dealing with, and be like, nope, not even going to chance it. So, and that does happen, again, more than you might think. Dave saying, that's why whenever I am getting 85, I have a tester. Absolutely, you have to. Steven saying, Demon Killer Springs and brand new MT ET streets and no change from stock springs and old MTs. Trying to figure out what else I am missing. Let's see. Well, there's a few things. So you're running Demon Killer Springs and brand new ET streets and no change from stock springs and old MTs. Trying to figure out what you're missing. A lot of that's going to have to do with power. Where the Demon Springs help is if you're making a ton of power, and it's not where you're making a ton of power on the big end. It's large, copious doses of torque that the 2.7 liter makes down low. That's really where the difference is. I mean, normally guys will get a little bit of a bump, not a lot, but a little bit of a bump with the Demon style springs. For stock power levels, they may not help you a lot. But if you've got a massive amount of torque down low and you really need to plant the tires, they can certainly help. Doc saying, absolutely, test every time. Dave saying, Steve, so you can look on Lakewood shocks front and rear and getting rid of your front sway bar. Oh, there's that too. HU37 saying, most high flow cats are only 200 cell count as opposed to OEM 400 cell. That is for the metal substrate. Got to make sure we're talking about the right type of substrate. Metal substrates are 200 cell. The other cats are going to be 400 cells. Some high flow cats are also as low as 100 cell count. That is true. The cooked green cat is EPA approved at a 300 cell count, and that is also a metal substrate catalytic converter. Memory serves me correct. Frederick's checking in and saying, what up, B? Got the arm flex and the ball guy. I like it. Pat saying, running a 305 45 18 on a Charger. That should dead hook. I mean, that's what a lot of guys have run on the Bogart wheels. I'm sorry, on the, not Bogart. God, now my brain just exploded. Running the, God, name just blew out of my head. Anyway, y'all know which ones I'm talking about. Those rims. I'm looking right at them in my head too. Anyway, Chris has got a full set of them. HU saying, I killed 2 sets of cats in my car since supercharged. Never had a problem since I switched to Cook's green cats. They're good cats. Bravados. Golly, man. Global Emission Systems makes them. The cats consist of metallic substrates. They're good stuff. Someone saying, Demonology stream has ended. Oh, no. Dr. Div saying he's had some good luck with the greens. I mean, everybody has, good luck and bad luck with different components. Someone saying, drive your car on 87 if you want to ruin your car. Sure, you would be surprised, man. It happens a lot. And also, too, with having good luck and bad luck with different components, guys, let me tell you how regularly brand new components don't work in the aftermarket world. You would be extremely surprised, maybe, to learn that there are, in terms of failure rate, initial not working rate, in some cases it's like 50-50. Distributors, I know I've had all kinds of weird issues with distributors and coils over the years, but yeah, it's not uncommon for stuff to just show up and it ain't quite right. Oh, speaking of fun stuff, Dr. Dev, don't let me forget that we still have to talk about Foxy, as well as the Camaro. We've got all kinds of fun projects in the works. Shift's asking, do you think the DBR hold up the shock for a manual? Yes, they would. Wondering due to its softer sidewall, bias or a little sketch on the top end. Here's what I like about the DBRs. I like that they're a lighter construction because they're lighter, but they are still a radial. They have a smaller, thinner sidewall than the ET Street R, which is one of the reasons why they're like 5 or 6 pounds lighter. In fact, the DBRs on a Recluse wheel are the same weight as the ET Street R is on a D5 wheel, if that gives you any idea. But what I like about them is that they will work with manual transmissions fairly well because they have a much more compliant sidewall, but they're extremely stable on the big end of the track. In fact, those things are stable, like real stable at 140, 150 miles an hour, so far as I've been told. Anyway, you get the idea. They're real stable, and yes, they would do great. In fact, I would have really liked to have run this tire on the Z06 or the Viper for that matter. Dr. saying, I tell my customers to bring the vehicle on the fuel that they use daily. Absolutely. You're saying if you want crap, then bring it with crap so we can keep the timing low. I've had several people show up with the gas light on and oil change light on with crap tires. It happens. And it does happen. And saying I can't stand it stresses me out. That's when you just punt them, dude. I mean, look, the last thing you want to do is to have somebody bring a vehicle to the dyno in a condition that would cause it to fail. And look, these things can fail with the absolute best, stars aligning and best care and maintenance, and oil changes are great and everything else is fantastic. They can still fail, So when they're brought in like that, dirty, filthy, like somebody's going to be in your car, right? Again, I've seen it all. Absolutely seen it all. So, well, I haven't seen it all because you see something new all the time, but you get the idea. Sovereign saying I drive a car that uses 87, but I'm sticking to 89. I seem to notice a difference in smoothness. A lot of folks do. And I don't know, my truck, the work truck, Buffy, is an 87 octane rated vehicle. I don't ever run it on 87 because the fuel economy on 87, it just doesn't ever seem to be as good as it is on 89. See, Fitz asking, when running aftermarket coilovers with adjustable shocks on modern stock Charger, how would you set up front and rears for drag racing? Soft fronts, stiff rears, or soft front and rear? So no, what you'll do is you will set the car up with, like, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the stiffest and 1 being the softest. I would have the right front at about a 3, the left front at about, I'd have the right front at about a 3, the left front at about a 3.5 or 4, if you can get them into that range. If you're going to be driving the thing on the street there and back, and like you want to set it and forget it setting, that's about as light as I would let them go because the car is going to be heavy. But at the track, I would say 2 for the right front, 3 for the left front. In the rear, I would do, on the right rear, again, 10 being the stiffest, 1 being the softest, I would do like a 6 or a 7 in the right rear and probably a 4 for the left rear, because the car is going to, from your point of view, it's going to kind of rock over this way. Guys used to do weird stuff with springs. They'd stick Nerf footballs and regular footballs in the right rear spring, all kinds of fun stuff. But anyway, that would give you an idea for how I would set it up. Oh, Tuxedo's asking, hey, do you know why cars drive differently? Talking about he had parked a 2009 Toyota Camry, and the throttle of that car was like super sensitive. The reason why is because each manufacturer has different, what's known as throttle mapping. And what throttle mapping is basically what the computer tells the engine. It's like how the computer tells the engine how to rev based on how much your input of your foot is. Some are a little bit more sensitive than others. And so that's why each vehicle will be a little bit different based on, again, how the manufacturer sets up that throttle to be either more or less responsive. In sport mode, the throttle will be more responsive, and normally in street or comfort mode, it will be less responsive. Pat saying 18 by 11 wheel, by the way. Yeah, you'd be good. Tuxedo saying, I think you skipped some of my comments. They may have been modded out, buddy. Doc Div saying, and if it's really crap, then you need to take it down the road. One of my favorite marijuana swisher in the cup holder for when they pick their scat up. Yeah, that can get a little bit nuts if somebody's got their Chiba still in the car. ET saying, Subbeam, my 16-year-old has 5-0 fever. Any recommendations where to look for one? I don't know, man. Talking about the Fox body. Yeah, I don't even know where to help you find one. I mean, Facebook Marketplace, maybe Craigslist. I don't know. Some of those things. The problem is that those cars are getting to the age now where no matter how well they were kept, they all had rust issues. And man, I don't even know what to tell you as far as which one to buy, which one to not buy. There's just a lot of there's a lot that can go on with those cars. So I would say be careful with the one that you buy. Look at the torque boxes. Again, even the ones that were pristinely kept are, having issues. So Ethan X saying, I have a buddy who is going for a Coyote swap and a Fox. Any tips? Put a roll bar in it. That thing's going to scream. The funny thing is there is who makes the tubular K member that everybody was using? I can't remember. It's D&D. It might have been. I think it was D&D Performance. Made a K member for, some of the more wild swaps back in the day, and they might make one for that Fox body. But yeah, tubular K member obviously is the only way to go for that. Pat saying, funny, the old cars with big cams sound better to me than modern muscle, and the wrinkle wall bias ply tires look cooler doing their thing when you launch. But modern is faster, efficient, so I concede. Yeah, it's a little bit tough, man. Modern transmission technology has a lot to do with that. Ethan's saying, also, I just paid off my 14 Mustang GT with only 69,000 miles on the clock. Congratulations. Should I look to boost or trade it for a 10-speed? The Gen 1 Coyotes are sort of old, even though the swaps kill newer 392. So here's the thing, man. If it's me, the 14's a fun car, man. I mean, the only issue, obviously, oil pump gears, the normal Coyote stuff. But the 14s are really nice. I love them with Pro Chargers. They're just a fun car to drive. But man, that new 10-speed, it's tough. It's really tough. The new 10-speed is offering up a level of performance now with that car that it's just unheard of. And it's going to be a tough sell, even to say go with an S550 10-speed with the S660 looming in the distance, so to speak. So I would hang on to the car for just a little bit, enjoy not having a car payment. But if you're thinking about getting a newer version of what you got, maybe wait until that 660 shows up and see what you think about that one. Kurt's asking, what is a good brand of truck tire other than Goodyear? I used to run Nitto Terra Grapplers on everything that I had that was a four-wheel drive truck. If it's just like a daily, like a street truck, I mean, really anything is going to be good. If you're just looking for something with mileage, General Tire, Cooper Tire makes some good tires. But again, if I'm doing something that's going to be a little bit more aggressive, some off-road stuff, the TGs, the Terra Grapplers always did good for me. So that's what Whitey Ford had on it. Tuxedo's asking, have you ever practiced driving cars that are sensitive? Yeah, I have. I mean, I've practiced with cars that had pedal commanders that were set very sensitive. So yeah, I have. Someone's saying that 10-speed shifts hard and fast. Yeah, it does, especially in drag mode. Tux is saying, thanks very much for telling me why cars shift differently. Very welcome. Happy to tell you why. Kurt's saying, Kurt Tank towing. What did I miss? Oh, for towing. If it's a single axle, what was the freaking Michelin tire? Michelin makes one that's really good, and I can't remember the damn name of it. Kind of a heavier sidewall type of a tire. Can't remember the name of it. I just noticed it. I happened to run across it, and I can't remember the name of it. But I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to it. But yeah, check out the Michelins. They're always really good. Doctor is saying, I've got the Nitto 420s on my truck for street use. Also can't go wrong with Michelin. I just saw that. Very cool. Pat's saying the coolest cars I ever owned and drove were POSs as far as body was concerned. Put an old school 440 or a Hemi in anything and it'll tear it up. Well, that's the thing. I mean, and to be honest with you, over the years, time takes its toll on all of us, right? And so the issue that I've had really like with Foxy's got rust in the normal Mustang, hatchback rust areas, at the seam on the C-pillar. But that car is actually really rust free, all things considered. What the hell? Anyway, oh yes, for those of you that may be new to the channel, you may hear something, could be anything, blasting in front of the shop. That is because where we are, this is very close to Velocito, and that is on, this is kind of the on the way there type of thing. So there's no telling what you may hear. It's surprising anybody was out there actually playing because we're getting a little bit of weather out here right now. But this weekend, there are going to be definitely lots of stuff going on. We got Texas 2K floating around down here, and a lot of folks have been getting ready for that. So it's been kind of fun listening to them blasting around down here. Michelin Pilot, Pat's talking about for towing. Michelin Pilots, no, they weren't the pilots. It was one of the truck tires. Tuxedo saying if he could create his own car, be based around that 96 Chrysler Sebring. Those are neat cars. A lot of folks loved those when they first came out. I know they sold really well. Pat's asking, what do you think about the Equus? I'm not familiar with it. Not familiar with it enough to actually form an opinion. Ethan's asking, don't know if you covered it yet, but explain the difference between inertia and load-based dynos and why one is more consistent than the other. So the main thing is this, an inertia, and I'm going to use an extreme example of the inertia, which would be the DynoJet 428. It's the old school 660-pound roller in the ground or roller on the lift. Those things are great because it's a static load. It never changes. And the software is just coming up with how fast did you accelerate that mass and for how long did you accelerate it for? And that's it. Extremely consistent, provided that everything is calibrated properly. Now, a Mustang dyno, on the other hand, has some issues potentially in terms of calibrating that dyno. And if it is not calibrated properly, can give some interesting results. And to illustrate that, I wanted to show this particular car here, where the one run is ending at like 6150 and the other run is ending at what should be an indicated like 6300. Well, both cars will run to about the same RPM, somewhere around 6400 RPM. One of them was set, well, they were both set in wheel speed, but if you notice that RPM is different than what the car was run to, and because of that difference, that delta between runs, the reading was a little bit different. And that's enough to throw the numbers off. And especially if you're going from dyno to dyno, and or the same dyno, but a different operator is baselining the car, or is maybe not as particular with how they're calibrating the dyno, you can get different readings just based on how the thing is calibrated based off of that wheel speed. So that's one of the reasons why there's some inconsistency with eddy current. Now, typically eddy current is going to be extremely consistent if it's calibrated, and if it's not only the wheel speed is calibrated properly, but the machine itself is calibrated regularly, once a month, once every 3 months, whatever, depending on the usage that the thing's getting. Or if you just happen to notice that it's kind of varying a little bit more than it used to, then you need to calibrate. You calibrate it with weights. But anyway, the main thing is to just understand that dynos, although they're great for a tuning aid, they're only great while the car is on the dyno. And you're looking for a percentage amount of power gained, not necessarily the number of horsepower is gained. And this comes into something a little bit weird too with Mopars. It's not that Mopars are special or there's some kind of magical quality to the Pentastar brand, but it's interesting that, a lot of folks ask about, well, how much power does a cam make? How much power does a tune make? And you almost want to tell them nothing, because they oddly don't pick up a lot. In this case, 25 or 30 horsepower to the rear wheels. However, that same car, full weight, will damn near go tens. So, it's one of those things where you go, well, in total, it only picked up with this mod, it made up 25 horsepower-ish. Other mods, another 25, so you pick up 50 horsepower, but, you almost pick up a second in ET. Tire for tire and everything. So it's just kind of weird. The ultimate dyno, I guess, at the end of the day, is really going to be the drag strip. And that's going to tell you what kind of gains you actually got. This piece of paper right here does not change anything with how that vehicle actually drives. That'll give you something to look at, something to show your buddies, or something to wipe your ass with, depending on your mood when you get the piece of paper. But the reality is that it doesn't change how the vehicle drives. And although a lot of guys hang their hat on a dyno number, the reality is it's all about how the car, truck, boat, plane, airboat, it's all about how it performs, and not necessarily what that dyno sheet says, whether it's really high or really low. It's funny. Both scenarios are equally as bad. You get your car back and you think it's making all this power, only to get walked on by a car making significantly less. You're going to have a bad day. I'll take that a step farther. Shalandra was my 2016 392 SRT. you realize that that car consistently made low numbers on the Mustang dyno at Pikes Performance. And this is with me strapping it down and me dynoing the car and me tuning the car. So it was kind of funny. That car would consistently put down low numbers, but was consistently the quickest of its kind at the time. So just saying, the number doesn't always tell the tale. Oh, Tux is talking about the compact. Oh, talking about the car you would like to make. Very nice. Talking about it would be shiny. You like some shiny. I like it. Someone saying 41 watchers and like 29 likes. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that share button. Pat saying it's like a modern muscle car, but made of metal and overpriced. Looks just like a Mustang. Oh, I know which one you're talking about. That thing, the thing with the front and the, yeah. No, dude, that thing is like, I don't know how that ever got greenlit. I mean, it's like a Homer Simpson design contraption. I know exactly which one you're talking about now. Yeah. Tuxedo's giving us an idea for an engine and car combination that you would like. I like it. Brother saying, how about 6.4 exhaust manifolds on a 5.7? A lot of people have done that. Any benefits? What I need to tune. Benefits to that are that you'll actually have an exhaust header as opposed to that log manifold. You would need to run the full exhaust system though. I'm not sure if the 5.7 catback would bolt to it anyway, but that was actually, that modification was part of the SCAT package where you would actually get, I think it was SCAT package number 1, you would get the headers, exhaust manifolds off of the 6.4/Hellcat along with the 6.4 catback. Yeah, there are some benefits to that. Obviously, it flows a lot better, sounds way better than what you got. And it might be a little bit lighter too, now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, those are actually, it is lighter. So those would be the benefits. You just have to get the hangers and all that. Ethan saying, I've always trusted Mustang dynos more due to the lower numbers. I've seen Hellcats dyno up to 50 rear wheel horsepower lower in Mustang dynos in comparison to dyno jets in San Antonio. Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, look, if you take the number, okay, here's the thing. You take 595 or 590, whatever the number you want to pick. I always said, most of the Hellcats made around 590. To get like an idea for how accurate the Mustang dyno is when it's calibrated and set up properly, take 590 and divide it by 0.85. That number is going to come out to around 707-ish horsepower, which is about right considering that that's what the car is rated at. We have some cars that just dyno low, demon. But the fact is that most Hellcats would put down that number, and it seemed to be pretty legit. And since that's really all I ever messed with, I mean, the majority of the cars going through Pikes were all primarily Hellcats. Then you just kind of got used to seeing it. 590, 595. Every once in a while, you'd see one hit 600, and I'd always think, was it the dyno set up right? But yeah, you'll have an outlier here high and an outlier here low, but for the most part, they're all right at 590. X is asking, what was your first V8 car that you had? The first V8 car that I ever owned, let me think about that. That's kind of funny. Probably my Mustang. Yeah, would have been my 96 Mustang GT. Pat saying, yep, Equus Boss 770. Yep, base, whatever it is, yeah. Tuxedo's asking if I have a favorite song. I don't really have any favorite songs. It depends on my mood and it depends on what I'm doing. Like it depends on what I'm focused on also. Because a lot of times I'll use music specifically to focus. If I need something in the background, uh, just to drown out, the tinnitus in my ear, or, just whatever's going on, then it'll be something, it'll be like a lounge music, like a club lounge music type of a thing. Something with pretty decent beat, like about a 60 to 64 beats per minute type of a groove that, just a little bit airy if I'm just like for background stuff. If I'm running heavy bag, actually, you can see what my playlist is for my heavy bag routines. It's actually on here. It just says heavy killing it, heavy bag or something like that. That'll have all kinds of different stuff in there. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I don't really have a favorite though. Oh yeah, Sovereign saying he's never seen that thing, that Mustang looking thing. Yeah, I don't know. That's an opinion on back pressure. It's bad. I've always maintained it was a myth when it was being pitched in the 80s in Car and Craft Hot Rod magazine. Recently, Roadkill guys did a study and declared it a myth. Yeah, so the thing is, it doesn't really, it's not a thing. I'll put it like this. If back pressure was bad, then turbos wouldn't work. So yeah, I'll put it to you like this. The walking around accepted parasitic loss for a turbocharger is about 10% of the engine's power versus hundreds in some cases of horsepower for a positive displacement supercharger, and somewhere around 15% for a centrifugal supercharger. So it all kind of depends on what we're talking about, but no, back pressure isn't necessary. I mean, in a naturally aspirated car, you've got it's scavenging that you're working with. It's not really back pressure per se. You've got certain pumping losses and certain efficiencies that take place in a give and take relationship based on primary length. If you got primaries that are like that long versus primary lengths that are only that long, then you're going to have a scavenging effect that takes place earlier on or later on in the power band. Anything that happens after that in terms of that will be basically just sizing the exhaust to fit the power level of the engine. But, an actual back pressure, it doesn't, like, it exists, but it doesn't exist. And again, supercharged applications may not be necessarily as affected as a naturally aspirated combination because you have a compressor in a gear driven, or I should say a crank driven supercharger. You have a compressor that is basically scavenging the cylinder for you. So anyway, I don't really see a lot of issue there. Again, if you can make 1,000 horsepower with 25 PSI of back pressure in your exhaust system with a turbo, I think that might answer your question, although it is spinning a turbo. Ethan saying, before I head out, list and order the fastest between 2021 Mustang GTs, 2021 Camaro SS, and 2021 392 stock for stock. Settle the debate, my friend. Take care. Okay, so fastest 2021 Mustang GT. We're only talking about GTs, not bullets or, Mach 1s, if that's even a thing. 355 geared base model, ordered that way would be the quickest and one of the fastest. The Camaro would probably come in from a roll racing point of view in second. The 392 doesn't do well in that environment, but I will tell you that at the drag strip, 1320 versus a 355 geared Mustang versus a Camaro, the 1320 is going to give that Mustang all it can handle at the drag strip, with the Mustang reeling it in on the big end. It's going to race. That's been my experience with them anyway. Oh, Sovereign's hanging out with Tuxedo. So we're not saying Bon Scott rip. Oh, from ACDC. Tuxedo's a plus Thunderstruck. Very good. Likes the early Raptors. Nice truck. Yeah, Sovereign saying that Equus Bass looks, I don't even know how you say it. Yeah, it just looks bad. Ship's asking, I've heard of people using line lock on manual so it doesn't move on staging. Do you have any ideas how that mechanism works? Well, the idea is, so if you're using, typically guys will use a line lock for the burnout. If you're using something like that to keep it from moving on staging, what you're doing is you're getting the car into the beams, and then you're tripping your second beam and you're hitting your line lock. And what you're doing is you've got the car in gear, you've got your foot on the clutch, and you're just back off of the clutch just a little bit from the floor. And so you've taken the slack out of the clutch, and you might sit there with your line lock engaged. And then when yellow, 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 if you're going, or just when he's flash yellow for a pro, you let the thing go, and the idea is that you have taken up the slack and there's just a slight amount of contact between the clutch material and the flywheel. So if you didn't have the line lock on, it would barely kind of creep forward. So that's why you might see somebody doing that with a manual transmission. Some guys will use a gear. Some guys will use a drift brake for that also. If you've ever seen Cletus McFarlane in that car that he drives, Leroy, I'm guessing this is what he's doing. This is what I've seen a lot of guys do back in the day. Just bring the drift brake back a little bit, take the slack out of the clutch, and then when you launch the car, it's kind of you're letting the clutch out as you're dropping the brake as well. So different ways to do stuff. Works for a turbo car. Sovereign saying Kudistang. Yeah, it doesn't even look that good. Pat's hanging out with Sovereign. Tuxie as well. It was nice meeting you, B. Got to hit the bed. I'll see you soon on the next live chat. Very cool. Everybody say bye to Tux. And with that, we are coming up on 2 hours, so I think I'm going to do the same thing. Shiv saying, thank you for the detailed answer. Knowledge is power. Got the arm flex. I like it. All right, guys, I'm going to check out with that. Love each and every one of y'all. Couldn't do this without you. Thank y'all very much for hanging out with me tonight. It's funny, just to kind of wrap things up with this dyno stuff. Guys, this is stuff that just happens. Take whatever dyno stuff you're dealing with a grain of salt. That's the main thing. Don't rest. Don't let your dyno number steal any sleep. I'll just put it like that. Anyway, with that, I really do got to go. Guys, again, thanks. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Get your shots. And keep wearing your mask, if not for yourself, then for others. That's a wrap. Adios.